it says that any loss which is remaining after set off against the income under any head of income, it can be set off in the next year against profits of the business. One thing, let me be honest, I have deliberately not reproduced the whole of section 72 here. Let me honestly say that if you read section 72, it says that as regards the carry forward, this section, it refers to the loss assessed under the head profits and gains of business or profession. After saying that, the section says that it can be set off against profits of the business. They don't say it can be set off against income which is assessed under the head profits and gains of business or profession. You have to read the section very carefully. The section, it merely mandates that in the year of set off, the set off should be against profits of the business. As long as it is profits of the business, you are eligible for set off. Okay, what could be the situations in which the profits of the business are there? Not necessarily those arising from your business. It could be a situation in which there have been sale of the depreciable assets and you have made some profit out of the sale of those assets, which are assessed under section 50 as STCG, but still they are profits of the business. See, I am once again highlighting this point. It can be set off against the profits of any business or profession carried on by him and assessable in that assessment year. That is all the section says. It should be a gains from a business which is assessable in that particular assessment year. It never says assessable under the head profits and gains of business or profession. So we have to widen our mind, change our outlook. We have to be very sure that in respect of the brought forward business losses, we may have the right to set it off against income which has been assessed under some other head of income also, as long as that particular income constitutes the profit or gain of any business. Sir, when the stakes are very high, you just can't leave it, nah? Just like Mr. Banashekar, when he was referring to the thing in crores, say when you have a brought forward business loss of some 200 crores and this year you have a STCG of 150 crores, are you going to leave it? You mean for that particular assessee? No, you see, each assessment year is different. That is the classic rule as far as the income tax is concerned. Each assessment year is different. The stand which you took in an earlier assessment year, you don't need to take it in the subsequent assessment year. There is no law which mandates that whatever stand you took 2 years back for that particular assessee, when the department takes one stand in this room for one assessee and some 2 benches away in the same tribunal, the DR may be taking a totally different stand. When they can dare to do that, we can also see if you, and probably once you are now advised of the correct legal position, do you think that you should still follow a wrong legal position? Certainly not. This is not a normal decision. This is a very recently reported decision. Of course, the tribunal, the department may be taking it up further, but still, but that is the reason why I cited you the Supreme Court decision of this. That Supreme Court decision still stands unaffected. There is no retrospective amendment to beat the decision. See, if you take several other decisions of the Supreme Court, if you feel that the department is pinched by it, the moment they see such a good decision, they will come out with a retrospective amendment. But even after 40 years, you don't have any prospective or a retrospective amendment which is there to affect that particular Supreme Court judgment. That is the reason why I am pointing it out. So we may have to change our perceptions and we may have to take a bold stand. Okay, next is, this is an unreported decision of the Delhi High Court. I have given you the citation, it is given in TIOL, but otherwise with this decision meant unreported. CIT versus Excellent Commercial Enterprises and Investments Limited. Actually, this is a very old case which has not come to our knowledge. That's the reason why I thought I would bring it to your notice. See, in this case, the assessee had a brought forward business loss. He wanted to set it off against a dividend income. In that particular year, the dividend income was taxable. The Delhi High Court, again relying on the Supreme Court decision in the case of this Kokanada Radhasamy Bank Limited, they had no hesitation in saying that even though the dividend may be assessed under some other head of income, since in that particular case the assessee was a dealer in shares and the shares were held as stock in trade, such income is attributable to the business income of the assessee, and therefore the brought forward business loss can be adjusted against the income which is assessed under some other head. Now, see, this is what I want to highlight to you. All of us think that the income in question should be assessed under the head, should be one which is accessible under the head profits and gains of business or profession, to enjoy this benefit. This, whether a particular income is an income from business, is not governed by the provisions of section 14 which lay down the various heads of income. You have to approach it from the commercial principles. If by applying the commercial principles, the income in question can be logically termed to be a business income, then that income would be an income from business, despite the fact that it could be assessed as a short-term capital gain or income from other sources or whatever. Tomorrow, a new source of head of income may be introduced by the department, but let's not bother about it. As long as the commercial principles, the commercial logic, it tells you that it is an income which is one associated with the business of the assessee, it has to be taken as a business income. So, apply that rule, see if the income in question in the current year can be termed to be a business income, and against such an income, you can certainly set off the brought forward business losses. Any questions on this so far? Are we clear? Huh? Yeah. That is what the first digital electronics case said. That is exactly what the Digital Electronics Limited case was about. see, that is what, see, as long as it is one associated with the business asset, yeah, whether short term or long term, it doesn't matter. Does not matter at all. Yeah, it doesn't matter at all. Does not matter as long as they are business assets, as long as they are profits derived from the transfer of the business assets, they would still be profits or gains of the business. And as I said earlier, there is no requirement that this particular income should be assessed under that profits and gains of business or profession. All that is required is it has to be a profit or gain derived from the business. That is all. Nothing more. Yeah, you have to. You don't have an option. See, you don't have an option. Even if you are today a dealer in shares and assuming that a dividend is taxable, under what head you will show? You have to show the dividend only as income from. We will assume that the conditions which are laid down in section 1034 not complied with. You are getting some dividend income. Where will you show it? You have to necessarily show it as income from other sources because that is the requirement as per the act. But that does not debar you from claiming that dividend income is your business income. That is exactly the point I wish to make. Okay, now we will come to the issues involving unabsorbed depreciation. I wanted to bring to your notice this special bench decision in Times Guarantee Limited. I have given you the citation also. Let me not go very deep into this special bench decision. This special bench decision, it assumed importance when there was a controversy relating to a slight amendment in section 32(2) when they introduced a condition relating to the unabsorbed depreciation being in a position to be set off only against the profits and gains of business or profession. All of you know that it was there for only for a period of 4 to 5 assessment years. After that, the legislature, it brought back the position to the old one. The confusion was during the intervening few years time, there was a particular statutory provision. Now what about the provision prior to that and what about the provision after that? So in this particular case, this Times Guarantee Limited, the special bench, they very clearly brought out the 3 different time zones for this particular provision. As far as the first time zone is concerned, the unabsorbed depreciation can be set off against any head of income. The depreciation in the particular current year, it can be set off against any head of income, and any unabsorbed depreciation will go to the next year. It will be treated as the current year's depreciation, and again the current year depreciation, it can be set off not necessarily against the business income, it can be set off against any income. Now the in between stage up to the 91-92 to 95-96, what to do? There the special bench said you calculate. See, at that time 2 requirements were brought in by the legislature. One is they said you have only a 8 years time frame. Second thing, they said you can set it off only against business income. These were the 2 things. So at that point of time, for those few years, the tribunal said, okay, for these years, you keep the things separately. Note these 2 things. They said you can set it off only against business income. You have a time span of only 8 years. Again, after that period, from the 96, 97 onwards, they said the old position. The legislature has gone back to the old position. Find out what is the depreciation for each year. If you are not in a position to set it off against, the second time zone, there is another condition. In the year of set off, the first year of set off, you had to first set it off against business income, and only after that you had to go for other heads of income. Now, yes? One minute. Let me complete this. I'll come to you. Let me complete this depreciation aspect because I'm still not over about this. Let me complete this times guarantee. I'll answer your question. Okay. Now what about the present time frame from the assessment year 2005-6? The special bench said, as far as this thing is concerned, you calculate for each year separately. You can set it off against any head of income. Anything which remains unabsorbed, that will be treated as current year's depreciation. And the current year's depreciation can be set off against profits and gains of any head of income. Are we very clear? See, the point is that the unabsorbed depreciation is governed by the provisions of 32(2), that is subsection 2 of section 32. There is a very, very clear legal mandate as far as the present position is concerned. In the year of claim, that is in this particular year where I am having a depreciation, I can set it off against any head of income, not necessarily business. Subject to the prohibited areas. See, for some certain years, the prohibition was not there. See, I am covering the entire gamut of the legislation. Subject to the other areas, yeah. I will come to your question also. That also, I am going to address it next and I will answer it in the affirmative. Okay, now, three different time zones. We'll go fast. This is the first time zone. Now, we have to note these points. As far as the unabsorbed depreciation is concerned, you can set it off against any income. There is no time limit also. Now I have some few questions to ask you. I will definitely cover the area relating to set off of unabsorbed depreciation against salaries. My view is it is possible. I'll come to that later. Now let me ask you some very simple questions. I have some two businesses A and B. How do I compute the depreciation? I have a very basic doubt. How should I compute the depreciation? Should I compute the depreciation for each business separately, or should I compute the depreciation for the assessee as a whole? I have a very basic doubt. I am not trying to mislead you. This is a doubt which is there in my mind. Let me ask you this question. How many of you feel that you have to compute depreciation for each business separately, or you have to compute for the assessee as a whole? Yes, sir? Huh? Separately. Separately? Yeah. Very good. So this side says for the assessee and this side overwhelmingly says for each business. Can you tell me why you feel it should be for each business separately? Huh? No. See, you answer my question. Don't ask me with another question. Okay, if you say that the depreciation is to be calculated for each business separately, supposing in business A I have one car, business B, I have another car. I sell the car in business B. What will happen? Both the in business B, I could end up with a STCG or STCL. In business A, there will be one block. In business B, there will be how many blocks can be there for the assessee for the same set of assets? Can there be two different blocks for the same assets which are entitled to the same rate of depreciation? Is it possible under the block concept? No. No? Not possible, ne? Then why are we having controversy saying that this brought forward depreciation of one business, whether it can be set off against the business of the eligible unit, non-eligible unit and all that? You see, you heard Mr. Bondshaker's session earlier, ne? He was raising issues relating to the unabsorbed depreciation of the non-eligible unit being set off against income of the eligible unit like that. Is there anything called depreciation of the non-eligible unit vis-a-vis depreciation of the eligible unit? No, it could be. It could be. I'm just reserving my view on that. It could be. But now, if you have two businesses A and B, should depreciation be computed for the assessee as a whole or for each business separately? We have to have a consensus on that. What are we going to conclude? Why should I do it there, sir? Even in the ITR firm, I can show the profit of all the businesses at one place, na? Okay. Why should I analyze, sir? Sir, when I have to pay the shell out the tax on all my income, why should I make an analysis? Huh? So what, sir? So what, sir? I am maintaining books of account separately, sir. I will tell you a simple way. I mean, huh? One may be? Okay. Then I will modify my example. Both are non-speculation businesses. A and B, both of them are non-speculation. Both of them are non-presumptive to start with. Yeah, different locations. How should I do it? L&T has got 80 subdivisions. Then for each division, can they have their own sweet depreciation schedule for the Income Tax Act? Having umpteen number of blocks, sir? Sir, I am asking only for income tax purposes, sir. I am not worried about accounting, sir. I am asking purely for income tax. Correct. See, I have suggested some possible payouts in my background material also. Anyway, okay. Now, this is one of the views you are saying, right? You are saying that compute the business income from all the businesses before depreciation, then calculate the depreciation for the assessee as a whole. Now, this is the second view, this side view. My friends on this side, they say calculate for each business separately. Now, in their support, I will say this: if the depreciation need not be computed for each business separately, why then do we have controversies like the one Mr. Banshekar was saying, depreciation of a non-eligible unit, whether it should be set off against the business income of the eligible unit and all that. Why should that controversy be there? No, I may be misleading you. Let me be very honest. I'm just trying to say something in their support. It need not necessarily be true. I'm just trying to throw something at you. Okay. Sir, how do we compute it, sir? I don't know, sir. See, what I am trying to tell you is that I have one factory building in one business. In another business, I had another factory building. I sold off in the second one. What do I do now? If you say that I should calculate for each business separately, in one I will have a depreciation, another I will end up with a STCG or STCL. What should I do now? Sir, tell something in their support, sir. Come on. Okay. No, don't ask me with another question. We will take it up as a separate issue and answer that. Okay. Now, this is another view. If this business-wise depreciation is to be calculated, compute for the entire assessee as a whole, then apportion it equitably. Solves the problem, very simple. Find out for the assessee as a whole, then apportion it equitably. I said it in a very simple way. Just like that I have said, how to apportion it equitably is your headache. But I am just throwing a solution. Okay, now this situation, two businesses A and B are there in the assessment year 2010-11. Both of them were non-presumptive. Now in the current year, one business, it opts for 44 AD, say. Now, for the same business in the earlier year, there is an unobserved depreciation. What happens to the unobserved depreciation? As far as business loss is concerned, there is no problem. You can set it off. But what happens to unobserved depreciation? Why, sir? Why I should forego, sir? Yeah. I don't need to calculate depreciation for each unit separately. You are in favor of the argument that the depreciation should be calculated for the assessee as a whole. Of course, for this business B, I won't calculate. It is deemed to be included in the 8%. I will calculate the depreciation for the other unit. Then there I will add that. That unobserved depreciation is deemed to be the depreciation of the current year. I will add it to that depreciation. What is the problem? Or I will set it off against, see, I built up my arguments gradually. I proved that the unobserved depreciation can be set off against any profit or gain assessed under any head. So the brought forward unobserved depreciation of the earlier year, I can set it off against any head. Huh? Huh? Yeah, same business I do agree. See, but against some other business I can do, na? Sir. We agreed that a business-wise a depreciation identity is neither there nor is it required. Unless we agree on that, then we cannot move further. All of us agreed that it is not necessary to calculate depreciation for each business separately. Even if it is needed for accounting purposes, as we said, find out what is the profit prior to depreciation and calculate for the depreciation of the assessee as a whole, apportion it equitably, so that his headache is also solved, everybody is happy. Now, for the earlier year, there is an unabsorbed depreciation. Why can't I bring it to the current year and add it to the current year depreciation of a non-44 AD unit? What prevents me from doing it, you tell me? Why, sir? Why no logic, sir? Is there any identity of the depreciation? Do you put a tag saying that this depreciation is for unit A, this depreciation is for unit B? The moment it enters the block, see, once you come to the block concept, no longer the individual asset is there, no longer the individual businesses, various businesses are there. It is simply a block. It is for the entire assessee, regardless of the 89 divisions which L&T may have. The tag is gone. You can't say for this division, you can't say division C, you can't say division D, nothing. Today for one of the businesses, as long as I comply with the conditions, I can opt for 44 AD. Now, see, these are one of the issues. Okay. Another point which I may throw at you is, if you come to the direct taxes code, there the direct taxes code, they want you to calculate the depreciation for each business separately. When the legislature specifically wants you to calculate depreciation for each business separately under the direct taxes code, in the absence of similar provision under the 1961 Act, what do I take it? You can think. You have to take the view that it is not necessary to calculate it for each business separately. Okay, now this issue. I have two businesses A and B. One is an EOU SEZ. Should depreciation be considered separately for each issue? I will come to this. See, there is an answer to this. One small point which I want to add to what Mr. Banushekhar said. As he very rightly pointed out, this 10A, 10B is no longer an exemption provision. It is now a deduction provision. It is a deduction which is available under Chapter 3. That's very clear. Also, consequent to an amendment made in the assessment year 2001-2, where they are speaking about the total income of the undertaking, when there were some controversies relating to that, the Karnataka High Court and several tribunals have said the total income of the undertaking is the total income computed in a commercial manner, not total income computed as per the provisions of the Act. In other words, it is a undertaking specific. For each undertaking, you have to calculate the total income. It is in that context that you are trying to calculate the depreciation for the undertaking. See, some time back I asked you a question. Now, why then are the controversies? The controversy is coming only because of this. What is the total income of the undertaking? There I have to necessarily, some way or other, find out the depreciation for the undertaking. Otherwise, how can I arrive at the total income? And another thing is, Mr. Banushekhar was saying that there is no reported decision relating to set off of brought forward business loss of the eligible undertaking against the current year's profit of the same eligible undertaking. I beg to differ. He referred to the Karnataka High Court decision in Yogawa Limited. That decision covers both. It covers two issues. I have given it in my background material. It's in the last 2 pages. I have very specifically showed to you that the Karnataka High Court decision, it covers 2 issues in this. But the first issue relates to the adjustment of a brought forward business loss of the eligible undertaking against the current year's income. Since each undertaking is insulated, the total income of the undertaking has to be arrived at, then necessarily it means that to arrive at the total income, you have to set off the brought forward business loss of the eligible undertaking. By the same token, any loss which is not concerned with the eligible undertaking will not affect the total income of this particular undertaking. What is this undertaking bothered about? About the losses incurred by some other non-eligible undertaking. Because the idea is to find out what is the total income of this particular EOU. Therefore, both the issues can be settled amicably. Now, my friend was asking, sir, you are asking me this question, right? See, this is a decision of the Chennai Tribunal, this Chandra Kumar's case, in which Mr. Bhanushekar appeared and argued. Some brilliant arguments were given by him, but unfortunately it fell on deaf ears. So at that point of time, the Chennai Tribunal said that there is no distinction between a business loss and a depreciation. Just as a salary cannot be set off against a business loss, so can not the salary be set off against this also. But this decision was given prior to the decision in the Times Guarantee Limited case. I told you the complete analysis of the Times Guarantee Limited case, the 3 different time zones. The current time zone, the special bench has very clearly said that the unabsorbed depreciation has to be brought forward to the current year. It has to be treated as the current year's depreciation, and in the current year depreciation, it can be set off against any income, because business loss stands on a totally different footing from depreciation. We know that there are several differences. We know that there is no time limit at present for carry forward of depreciation. There is no requirement for filing of a return within the prescribed time and all that. Section 80 speaks only about the return of losses. It doesn't speak about depreciation. There is no requirement that the depreciation should be one which is determined in pursuance of a return filed under Section 80 or 139(1) and all that. So that being the situation, in the light of the decision of the special bench in the Times Guarantee case, we can conclude that the depreciation of the current year can be used for setting off against salary. That would be my conclusion, sir. Sir, you are asking a question about clubbing. We will take it up now. What is your issue? Can you take the mic? Okay, tell me please. Yeah, sure. See, but you know that there is no head called a clubbed income of a minor. The clubbed income of a minor should be also under some specific heads. In the current year, under what head are those income arisen? You have to tell me that. So I cannot answer a general question like you. Was it an income from business? The minor's income, was it a business income? Say interest income on FD. then it is not possible, sir. I told you that a brought forward business loss can be adjusted against any profit and gain of a business. Not necessarily one assessed under that profits and gains of business or profession. It has to be attributable to a business activity. If it is not attributable to a business activity, by no stretch of imagination, a brought forward business loss can be adjusted against the clubbed income of a minor, which relates to a one which per se is income from other sources. That is not possible. Any other question in this area? Yes. Sir, that is a general mandate. Non-speculation loss, you cannot set it off against a speculation profit. But a speculation loss, you cannot set off against a non-speculation profit. So subject to that, it's there. Now, this notional adjustment for 80IA purposes, yeah, I fully agree with what Mr. Bhanushekar said. As far as this Velayudaswamy spinning mills case is concerned, I'll quickly go through what he said. He said that the adjustment of the business losses and depreciation will start only from the initial assessment year. Once you make a claim in the initial assessment year, then after that the set off of depreciation and business losses have to be done. But for the years prior to that initial year, you don't need to go and make a notional reworking, readjustment. That's what the Madras High Court said. This is because of the fact that the Madras High Court pointed out that there is no definition for the term initial assessment year. I will not be surprised if next year there is a retrospective amendment in the Act. All that the legislators will have to do is, they have to simply bring a retrospective amendment saying that initial assessment year for the purposes of this section means the assessment year in which the industrial undertaking begins to manufacture or produce any article or thing. Simple, the matter is over. Because there is no such definition of the term initial assessment year, we are escaping. Okay. Another joke I wanted to point out was, subsequent to this Madras High Court decision, the tribunals have tried to understand what was said in this. If you see my background material, I have told you about 2 tribunal decisions where the tribunals have felt, in one tribunal, the Hyderabad bench has gone to the extent of saying, instead of saying that that High Court decision is wrong, they said, only if it is a decision of a jurisdictional High Court, I am bound. If it is a decision of a non-jurisdictional High Court, when their lordships have misdirected themselves on the provisions of law, I am not bound to follow. This is what a tribunal is saying. I have pointed out this Hyderabad bench decision in my background material. And one Mumbai bench, in the case of one Pidilite Industries, it strangely says, no, we want to distinguish the decision. There in the Madras High Court was concerned only with the eligible unit. There, only that eligible unit was seen. The name of the case is Velayudaswamy Spinning Mills. There, these losses pertain to windmills. Is there very clearly in the facts of the case. The tribunal says these losses pertain only to a single unit. In that particular case, there was no other income other than the particular unit. So nothing wrong in what they said. If only in a situation where you have this unit, this ATIA unit and some other unit, then they said only the special bench decision, Ahmedabad special bench decision in gold coins will apply. This is the understanding by the tribunals of the Madras High Court. Fortunately, as far as we are concerned, this Madras High Court decision is binding on the assessing officers, and we will have the benefit of the judgment. Do you have any questions on this? Okay. Yeah. Okay. 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 The department will simply rework it. Even if they have passed an order earlier, they can simply rectify it as a mistake apparent from record. Because as far as the assessment record is concerned, there is no business loss. Even if they have served an order on you under 143.1, or even if they have concluded the assessment under 143.3, if it is 143.3, definitely the assessing officer would have noted it. He won't have allowed the set off. Even if there is a 143.1A intimation, it can be rectified under 154 as a mistake apparent from record. Yeah, now I have to perform the pleasant task of thanking all of you for your patient exercise. I tried to confuse you as much as possible, but in spite of that, both the sides held very firm, and we were able to come to some consensus on at least certain issues. So I have to thank all of you for the patient listening. Thanks a lot. I have to thank Mr. Aruli also, who moderated this session well. Thank you very much.
It is on behalf of all the audience, it is we who have to thank you who have come. Who have come all the way and spent your valuable time. Not only that, spending the time, it is going into that small issues. That is what when the moderator or the coordinator for this particular refresher course said, that he wanted to go into the small issues in a refresher course rather than that of taking a broad subject for discussion, and it is yielding good results. And for those who are into that archived unstructured learning structure, we once again want to inform that the unstructured forms have to be filled by you for each and every view which you are making, and sent to the institute for getting that unstructured credit. Thank you once again, and on behalf of each and everyone, I present a small memento on behalf of SIRC to the and we will continue from this